Welcome to the Original Self Podcast. I'm Evet DeCota, owner of DeCota Life Coaching and a psychology-informed life coach, exploring resilience, mindset, and the courage to become your authentic self. This is a space for honest conversations about growth, identity, relationships, and the messy moments in between that shape who we become. Between the salon chair and coaching sessions, I've watched people move through life in patterns they rarely notice. Patterns that are subtle, familiar, and incredibly hard to see from the inside. Today, we're talking about time. Not how to manage or optimize it, but how busyness becomes an identity. Stillness became uncomfortable. And somewhere in between, we stopped actually living our days and just hoped to get through them. This is episode 13, The Fullest Empty Life. Why you're always busy but never fulfilled. Today, I want to start with something that I've witnessed from behind the chair. Busyness is something I know personally. I work full-time in a salon, and on most nights and days off, I'm building my coaching business. I was thinking about this as I watched a salon client who was unable to be fully present during her entire appointment. She booked an appointment for highlights, color, haircut, blow dry. It's typically a 2.5-hour appointment. From the moment she sat in my chair, her laptop was open and her phone was face up on the station. Every few minutes, her phone would light up and she'd lean forward to grab it, like mid-color, mid-haircut. And then I'd have to readjust the cape or move my tray, move my body around the chair to get where I needed to be. Each time she was on the phone, she would mouth to me "Oh, I'm so sorry. One more minute." The minute never ended until the appointment was actually over. When I finished her hair, I asked her if she liked it, if everything was okay. And that's how I knew she hadn't looked in the mirror once during the entire appointment. She finally glanced up, laughed this tired little giggle, and said, "Yes, of course, I love it." I smiled. I booked her next appointment, but I just kept thinking about the fact that she hadn't relaxed for a single minute. She had scheduled this service, paid for it, shown up, and it was almost like it was just another checked off box on her endless to-do list. The silence that maybe she hoped for, she didn't receive it. I got it, though. Not talking gave me something that I didn't actually expect. My mind went somewhere quieter. It was just a break from being on all the time. I feel she came in for a rest, and I'm the one who walked away with it. So as I thought about that more, it just kind of left me wondering how many of us are showing up in our own lives without ever really arriving. I don't think there's a simple answer to that question, because the problem isn't just personal, it's maybe cultural, and it runs a lot deeper than one busy client in one salon chair. I know that. I feel like we live in a culture that has conflated activity with meaning, such as the calendar is full, therefore life is full. There's a psychological concept called action bias. It's the deeply human tendency to prefer doing something over doing nothing, even when maybe doing nothing is the smarter choice. Studies on soccer goalkeepers show they dive left or right on penalty kicks almost every time, even though statistically, staying in the center saves more goals. So that's what I mean by we always have to be doing something. We can't just stand still. We struggle with that stillness. Not because we're lazy or undisciplined, but because we absorbed a cultural message that equates motion with worth. If you're not moving, you're not contributing. If you're not contributing, what exactly are you? Stillness doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it can feel like failure. I personally received that message loud and clear as a young girl. My parents were always moving from morning until evening, sun up, sundown. They did what needed to be done before they even considered relaxing. If there was time left over, we went to the beach or the carnival or played games together, which was always great fun. They would even judge my brother and my latest dance routines that we thought we were on dance fever. And they would judge us on attitude and whether the steps were appropriate. Super fun. But it was not until everything was done. The point is, the message wasn't always spoken outright, but it was very, very clear. Don't sit around, move, and keep going. And here's the thing. Culture doesn't just allow this, it rewards it. Researcher Sylvia Bellezza at Columbia found that Americans often view busyness as a status symbol. In parts of Italy, leisure signals success. They say dolce far niente, the sweetness of doing nothing. You would think that since my family comes from Italy, that message would have got passed down, but whatever sweetness existed was quickly soured by their hustle to work, make money, and to be as American as possible. I really noticed this belief across cultures. Many immigrant families arrive in America carrying a powerful work ethic, probably born from sacrifice. Once here, that sacrifice often merges with like I was saying, the uniquely American idea that busyness equals worth. But before long, productivity becomes a measure not just of success, but of value. I think that we've made a virtue out of depletion. But beneath all of the cultural conditioning lies something much more personal. The psychological reality behind many overscheduled lives is avoidance. It's experiential avoidance, to be exact. It's the way we fill every hour specifically to avoid contact with uncomfortable internal experiences. Like grief, loneliness, uncertainty, or maybe even the silent dread that some feel for not living the life that they want. That packed schedule keeps those feelings just far enough away that you never have to face them directly. For many people, busyness isn't ambition. It's their way of coping. It's a coping mechanism. I experienced this firsthand when California mandated the closure of salons, spas, nail salons, the beauty industry for nearly 6 months. It wasn't 6 months at one time, but it was close. I went from constant human contact and days scheduled to the minute to what felt like solitary confinement. Then layered on top of that was grief from my mom's passing just months before. After 3 weeks of spending time on my own with no distractions, everything that I had pushed down came rising to the surface because that busyness was gone and there was nothing left to distract me. Once the distraction disappeared, I could finally see what it had done for me. It wasn't just managing the grief, it was managing uncertainty, loneliness, and surprisingly, the need for control. Surprising for me. That's another reason why we stay so busy that we don't talk about a lot, or maybe we don't even realize. It's control. In our world today, I think it feels increasingly unpredictable. So crossing things off a list gives us a temporary sense of order, that control. I did this. I finished that. I'm on top of things. It doesn't matter that the list never ends. It's the act of doing that makes us feel like somehow we have a say in how our life goes, scheduled, unfolds. And when life becomes genuinely uncertain, like something as scary as a diagnosis, a bad diagnosis, a loss, a relationship falling apart, often that list gets longer. Like I said, as long as we're doing, we don't have to sit with what we can't control. One of my friends always needs plans for the weekend. She told me that without something scheduled, something to look forward to, she starts to feel a bit down. And maybe she just simply loves connecting with others and having fun, and that's probably it. It can also be, for others, avoidance. The unscheduled weekend isn't just empty time for some. It's an invitation to feel things we've been outrunning all week long. And maybe that's why I've always got so many balls in the air. I built a salon from a 4-wall dump into this beautiful, thriving business. Years later, I dismantled it and created a studio salon. Then I went to school full-time while working full-time. I wanted everything those pursuits represented, and I earned every reward they gave me. But I also know that some of the motions served another purpose. There were feelings I didn't fully know how to process, so I just kept moving. The continual moving has a cost, though. It goes deeper than exhaustion. It reaches all the way into who we think we are. So with that said, who we think we are, what goes through your mind when someone asks at a party, "So what do you do?" Notice that we don't ask, "Who are you?" "What do you love?" We go straight to function. Psychologists call this role identity fusion, which is the merging of your self-concept with productive function. So it's the busyness becomes identity. Stillness then becomes existential threat. It's not just that you're bored when you stop. It's that you're no longer sure who you are because you're just so immersed in what you do. A few years ago, I started asking clients the question, "What do you do when you're not getting your hair done?" Now, the word "do" is in there, but it kind of disarms them. It's surprising how many people pause, like really pause. Some laugh nervously and some say, "I don't know," with a kind of sad honesty. Some just look confused. And a lot of times they say to me, oh, what do I do for a living? And I'm like, or just what are you doing in your life? And it really does open up a conversation about them. But that pause, when they pause, it tells me everything. Because somewhere along the way, many of us handed our identity over to what we produce. And if we are not producing something and you sit still long enough in this culture, someone will read it as laziness. I guarantee it. Or worse, evidence that something's actually wrong with you. At its most insidious, doing nothing becomes unworthiness in our culture. I know this one from the inside. I don't struggle with laziness. What I struggle with is stopping. Most nights after work and on my days off, I'm building something. My coaching business, this podcast even, the next project on the list, right? I'm almost always moving toward the next thing on my list. Sometimes I stop moving just long enough to binge a series instead of starting any of the to-dos. I used to judge myself for that, right? But now I see it differently. Well, sometimes I see it differently. I know it's not laziness. I know that it's my nervous system finally waving a white flag, if you will. It's avoidance showing up in a different costume. For people like me, stillness often has to sneak in through the back door. Because if it's trying to come in through the front, no, I can't have you. I have a friend who figured this out way before I ever did. She's both an accomplished musician and artist. And years ago, another friend of ours was having a conversation with her and asked her why she only taught music lessons 2 days a week when she could easily teach more often. Her answer really stunned me. She said she needed to set aside time to walk in nature, be with her family, and daydream. That's what she said, daydream. It was so honest and so confident. And it made me realize something about myself that was a little bit sad. I realized I had stopped doing those things. Looking at the clouds, sitting still, watching what I can only describe as squirrel du soleil, which was like these walnut trees that I had in my front yard. And squirrels would launch themselves from branch to branch, chasing one another as if they were performing for an audience. It was super entertaining, very fun to watch. And I would spend, maybe 20, 25 minutes doing it. Just enjoying. My musician friend understood something intuitively that Daniel Siegel, who's a neuropsychiatrist, put into his book called Intraconnected, we, which is me plus we. Siegel said that we're taught to see ourselves as isolated individuals defined by what we produce, what we achieve and accomplish. But humans are more than a separate me. We are also part of a larger we, connected to other people, our communities, and the world around us. But why does that matter? Maybe when every hour is devoted to productivity, we only end up living on the me side of ourselves. The pauses, the daydreams, the walks, the moments that look unproductive on paper, that's where the we side lives. It's where we connect or reflect and actually make meaning of our lives. So busyness doesn't just exhaust us, it cuts us off from a fuller version of ourselves, of who we are, who we want to be. And most of us don't even realize that we've actually given up something. So this is where neuroscience gets interesting. When your brain isn't focused on a specific task, it doesn't shut down. It activates what's called the default mode network. Default mode network. This is where your brain processes emotions, consolidates memories, and makes connections between ideas, and then builds a coherent sense of self over time. So in other words, some of the most important work your brain does happens when it appears to be doing nothing. When I was 15, I woke up one night and I looked out my window and there was this beautiful full moon. And I sat there staring at it long enough for my brain to just kind of quiet and then begin to move in a different direction. Maybe it was the sleepiness, but within 10 minutes, I had written this poem. And it wasn't because I was trying to. It just kind of came out of me because I had stopped doing everything else. It was like my mind had finally had room to grow, to go somewhere beautiful. I'm not sure I can do that today. Not because I've lost the ability, but because I've lost the conditions to quiet that mind. I'm working on them, but they don't come as natural. The 15-year-old who wrote the poem had something I've slowly given away. That was the unstructured time with no agenda, no device telling me where to look next. It's not nostalgia, it's neuroscience. The default mode network needs stillness to activate. And unfortunately, we've engineered stillness almost completely out of our lives. And I think it happens gradually, but I also think we call it progress. Think about it. Where have you had your best ideas? Most people don't say, at my desk, working. They say in the shower, or when they're on a walk, or a long drive, maybe just before sleeping. Those are default mode network moments. The architecture of daily life used to create these moments automatically. A waiting room with nothing to read, right? Commutes with no signal, no radio signal. Or a slow Sunday afternoon with nowhere to be. No one called those moments valuable. They just were there. They were doing something totally essential. They helped us process our experiences. Maybe tie up loose ends. But mostly they let our minds wander far enough to come back to something worth keeping. Then we gradually replaced those spaces with things that felt like upgrades. Waiting rooms now had Wi-Fi. So does my salon. That's why people work all the time. Commutes, stream podcasts and music, endless choices, right? You don't have to be in silence. And Sunday afternoons, if you have children, you're driving all over the place for whatever sporting event or recital they have. And if you're a working person, which most people are, you are either working or just doing everything you need to do for your house, right? So if none of that happens for you, then there's endless entertainment on the television that you can stream. Every gap is filled. Every pause is covered. And therefore, the brain that depended on those gaps stopped getting what it needed, basically. So when the smartphone came on the scene, it didn't just fill the remaining gaps. It made having gaps start to feel uncomfortable. Data from Apple's screen time found that Americans pick up their phones about 96 times a day. That's once every 10 minutes. Pew Research found most people check their phones within minutes of waking. I'm guilty of that myself. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and automatically reach for my phone. And then I immediately start listening to political podcasts. As you can imagine, that does wonders for my relaxation and continued sleep patterns. But it's what I do. And, I'll go to a restaurant. I watch people sitting at the tables with their family or at their family dinner tables, and their phones are sitting beside them, just waiting for the next interruption. I see people's eyes drift downward instead of towards each other. And then that makes the conversations become fragmented, right? That attention gets divided across the table. And so you're not fully present. In my own life, I barely read books anymore. I used to love reading. Somewhere along the way, social media and streaming started occupying that space where books once filled. The same thing happened with music. Music was woven into each day of my life. I am making a conscious effort to bring it back because I notice the difference immediately for me. I notice there is a calmness that comes over me, a creativity that comes over to me. So I am making sure that music is a part of my each day, because it creates the kind of wandering mental space that feeds the default mode network. I think there's a deeper issue that's not just distraction, it's interruption. There's a researcher named Gloria Mark, and in her study, she found that it can take more than 20 minutes to fully regain focus after an interruption. Most of us interrupt ourselves constantly with, our phone messages, phone calls, internet searches, the news banner that comes across our phones. We rarely experience sustained attention. In fact, to write this podcast, to record this podcast, I have to put my phone on airplane mode. Otherwise, I would never finish it. It would get constantly interrupted. The phone, I think, has made restlessness feel normal. We have become uncomfortable with our own inner experiences. The phone is like a relief valve, and every time we reach for it, we reinforce the idea that stillness is something we should be escaping from. And underneath that escapism, there's a grief and joy piece to it. The unscheduled moments aren't just where we have our best ideas. They're where we actually feel our lives. If there's grief, it needs space to move through us. Take joy. It requires us to slow down enough to register it. Some of the most important emotional experiences of being human, gratitude, wonder, love, even mourning, it happens in the pause. When you feel every pause, we don't just stay busy, I think we stay slightly numb. Brené Brown writes in her book, Atlas of the Heart, what she calls foreboding joy. It's the tendency to brace against good moments because fully feeling them feels way too vulnerable. That sounds crazy, right? But the most important thing is we cannot selectively numb emotion. When we numb grief and loneliness and fear, then we also numb joy, gratitude, and connection. The busyness that protects us from feeling the bad also prevents us from feeling fully, fully good as well. In college, I read a book by a woman named Trisha Hersey. She's the founder of the NAP ministry. That the NAP ministry argues that rest is not a luxury or a reward for productivity. It's actually a human need. And what I love most about her definition of rest is that it isn't limited to sleep. Rest can be creativity, laughter, time with people you love, seeking out beauty, learning something just because it just interests you. Maybe watching squirrels launch themselves through the walnut trees on a Tuesday afternoon. All of it counts. All of it restores us. When I stop, I mean really stop, it doesn't always feel like relief. Sometimes it feels lonely or sad. Sometimes I feel like I have nothing to look forward to, like my friend. I've sat with that long enough now to understand what it means. It means the stillness is working. Not because it feels good, but because it's finally allowing the feelings that motion was managing to come forward. And I mean, it can be uncomfortable, but it's the only way through. So this is all to say that rest isn't the absence of productivity. It's the presence of yourself. So let me reframe this. Let's get back into our own lives. I think we need to completely invert the way we talk about wasting time, because I don't think most of us actually know what it means any longer. Staring out the window is not a waste of time. Sitting outside listening to nature, not a waste of time. Playing with dogs, my brother's dogs in particular, it's not a waste of time. It's a joy. Putting on newly released music on a Friday evening and simply listening, not cooking to it, not cleaning to it, just listening is not a waste of time. It is rest. They are the moments the default mode network has been waiting for your entire week. These are the moments that Trisha Hersey is talking about when she says that rest is a human gift. They're the moments that Brene Brown means when she reminds us that we have to stop numbing ourselves long enough to actually feel our own lives. Scrolling on your phone through, reels is mindless. It's reflexive. It's filling the gaps scrolling. It's usually the biggest waste of time. And I say usually because, in all fairness, sometimes when I'm doing that, I find a TED Talk that changes the way I thought about something. Sometimes I fall down the rabbit hole of watching dog grooming videos that make me laugh. They're so cute. Sometimes I find hair videos that spark my creativity. So is that a waste of time? I don't know. Maybe if it's done long enough, it's a waste of time. The difference isn't just the platform. The difference is intention. Did you choose it, or did you simply fall into it, fall down the rabbit hole of mindlessly scrolling? I think the definition of presence can be many things. For me, it could be as simple as standing in the shower and listening to the sound of the running water. It could be listening to my client, not just to the words, but to the tone underneath them. It can be noticing that my mind has finally grown quiet. And for me, it can be eating something because it nourishes me, not eating out of emotion. I'm still learning that. But here's the reframe. Presence is the product, not the thing you produce while you're present. It's the presence itself. The difference between wasting time and spending it isn't activity versus inactivity. It's whether you are actually inside your own experience or you're running from it. One leaves you emptier than when you started, right? The other gives you something back. I think we've been measuring it all wrong. There's a framework from mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. It helps explain that the distinction between two mental modes, the doing mode and being mode. Doing mode is goal-oriented, future-focused, and constantly evaluating the gap between where you are and where you want to go to, where you want to be. It's the mode I'm in when I run my salon, build my business, record podcasts, answer emails, get everything done on my work to-do list. It's totally essential. I need to do that. Without it, nothing gets built or finished or gets moved forward. The problem isn't doing mode itself. The problem is that many of us have forgotten that there's another option. The other option is the being mode. That is present, experiential, not measuring, not evaluating, not planning. It's the shower, the music on a Friday night, my client's voice, the squirrels in the trees. It's nature doing the talking, and you're just listening. I notice doing mode in my body before I notice it in my mind. Almost every day, I catch myself taking a very deep breath, and it's not intentional. It feels like I've been holding my breath or breathing so shallowly that my body finally takes over. It demands oxygen. I think the breath is my nervous system kind of tapping me on the shoulder and saying, hey, you've been gone for a while. Come on back. Being mode feels good. My mind gets quieter, my body relaxes, and I just settle. I settle down. And yet I still default back to doing mode the moment there's something on the list. The moment I may feel uncomfortable. Researchers Liddy and Good described two related experiences that they call entanglement and disentanglement. Entanglement happens when we become completely absorbed in doing mode. The inner observer goes offline. We react, we execute, and produce without noticing ourselves doing it. Does that sound familiar? That's most of us, most of the time. Disentanglement, you're still doing the work, you're still moving through your day, but a quieter layer of awareness remains present underneath all of it. It's basically two parallel layers of your mind. You notice yourself, you notice the breath, you notice the moment. The awareness is available to almost anyone. It's not a personality type. It's a practice. The more often you return to being mode, the easier it becomes to access. You don't need an hour of meditation or a retreat in the mountains, although I highly recommend both of those things. You just simply need practice and tolerating the pause long enough for awareness to return. That's the entire practice. The pause. The philosopher William James wrote in 1890 that the ability to voluntarily bring back wandering attention over and over again is the very root of judgment, character, and will. Today, psychology calls that attentional control. Like any resource, though, it can be depleted with overuse, but it also can be replenished with rest. When our attention is constantly fragmented by notifications, scrolling, interruptions, we slowly lose the ability to choose where our minds go, what we're thinking about, how we're reacting. Eventually, though, our attention belongs to whoever or whatever is competing for it most aggressively. So what do? We don't need to delete apps or become monks. I don't want to shave my head. But we could try a small experiment. What if just one time this week, we create a block of time with no agenda, no productivity goal, and no self-improvement project attached to it? Maybe go for a walk without listening to anything, just the sounds of nature, the sounds around you. You could sit with your coffee and do nothing else. No scrolling, no talking, nothing. Sitting with your coffee. Let yourself be bored on purpose. Then pay attention to what surfaces in that pause. Going back to Siegel's we, the idea that me and we were never meant to be separate. The productive self, the scheduled self, the self whose worth seems tied to performance. Now we know it's not the whole self. It's only the part we've been trained to display. The rest of you lives in the pause. Siegel called it integration. You can't integrate a self that never stops performing. So the empty moment isn't a threat. It's where the rest of you lives. I know sitting in stillness can feel frightening, but believe me, it won't break you. When I finally slowed down, the loneliness came forward. The grief came forward. The questions I'd been too busy to ask myself came forward. It wasn't comfortable, but it didn't break me. In fact, it gave me something back. Stillness takes courage. And like any muscle, it grows stronger the more you use it. Eventually, you stop tolerating the stillness and begin to crave what it gives you. I am worthy of rest. Not after the list is finished, but now. Because I know that list is never finished. I'm worthy now, as I am. And so are you. You may not be able to get back the time that's already gone, but you can step back into the time you still have. Not to optimize it or improve it, just simply to live inside it, to become the me you already are. That's the fullest empty life. It was ours the entire time. Thank you for listening to the Original Self podcast. If today's conversation resonated with you and you feel ready to explore your own growth, you can learn more about working with me in the episode notes of this podcast. Until next time, have a beautiful day.